By 1930, 15 million people were unemployed, and over half the country's banks had failed. Men, women, and children were living in cardboard boxes and pleading for food. Many farmers were forced either to abandon their farms due to the fact that they could not afford to harvest nor to plant their crops. People that lived in mansions were dressed in rags, living in boxes, and even sleeping under newspapers just to stay warm during the cold winter nights. All signs of American patriotism were lost. The Great Depression was the longest-lasting economic downturn in American history that affected all social classes of people, ethnic background, and those of all ages. Many factors played in the start of the Great Depression. Farmers faced low prices and high debts. Many wealthy Americans were spending more than they were earning, and numerous countries besides the United States were dealing with the repercussions of the First World War. As goods began to pile up, due to consumer spending rapidly declining, it caused companies to slow production. People believed that the stock market was a quick way to get rich fast, and for the lucky ones, it was. Unfortunately, not only prices but stocks continuously began to rise. On October 24, 1929, the stocks took a dramatic drop, which caused 16 million stock investors to panic and sell their shares in masses. In total, 12.9 million stocks were traded. That day was known as Black Thursday. A few days after the stock market crashed, there was a frenzy on Wall Street when additional 16 stocks were traded. Various stocks were useless, and shareholders went broke. After the stock market crashed, many consumer buying power decreased, and in the result, many factories had to fire workers. Those who were employed, wages decreased and hours were dramatically reduced. Many farm prices fell radically, which resulted in farmers losing their homes and even their land. Millions of people of all ages lost their homes to foreclosure, their life savings, and due to financial issues, families began to split and people attempted to migrate away in hopes of finding a more stable place to live. Herbert Hoover was the 31st President of the United States during the Great Depression. Over 10 million people looked to Herbert Hoover and his administration for help during America's largest down spiral in history. With months of citizens struggling to survive, people realized that the country would not recover so easily. President Hoover believed that too much help from the government would destroy the citizens' self-reliance and would cause them to depend on the government too much. Economic depression cannot be cured by legislative action, nor executive pronouncements. Economic moves must be healed by the action of cells of the economic body, the producer and the consumers themselves. Herbert Hoover, 1930. This means Hoover rejected giving people federal relief, but instead they would have to come together as a community and fix it themselves. Hoover also believed that it was not the federal government's responsibility to create jobs. Unfortunately, this only made people dislike Hoover and see him as unaffected and not caring about the people in his country. By 1930, over 4 million people were looking for jobs and could not find it. The number of homeless people were growing daily, and so were soup kitchens and bread lines. People would steal and kill others for food or anything of value just to support their families. Despite countless calls for government assistance, Hoover negated to fund welfare programs. Many people would walk around town with their pockets turned out to show their financial desperation and that they had nothing in them. This was called the Hoover flag. Due to what seemed like neglect, the people of the United States band together and created little towns across the country called Hoovervilles. Hoovervilles were shanty towns primarily on the outskirts of major cities. These towns were built with glass, lumber, cardboard boxes, or any other material that could be used to make a home. People even dug holes in the ground and used anything to cover the top to protect themselves from harsh weather. Some homeless people found shelter in water mains. People attempted to build Hoovervilles close to major waterways and hoped to grow vegetable gardens to survive. These towns were extremely unsanitary. Many of them were infested with feces, rodents, and diseases. This posed a threat to the people living there, but was still tolerated by the community. African American life deteriorated throughout the Great Depression. African Americans were the first to be laid off, compared to their white counterparts. In the early stages of the Depression, African Americans received less aid than white people and ended up losing their homes to foreclosure and living on the street much more rapidly than Caucasians. In 1932, the citizens of the United States elected a new president, Franklin D. Roosevelt, the cousin of the former President Theodore Roosevelt. Franklin D. Roosevelt took office during the bleakest years of the Great Depression. His platform talked about balancing the budget, assisting the farmers, bringing more industrial jobs, and loaning money to banks. The first 100 days of Roosevelt's presidency, he created the New Deal. The words New Deal symbolized the new relationship between the people and their government, which provided several new federal agencies. The Tennessee Valley Authority was a new program that enabled the federal government to build dams along the Tennessee River to make hydroelectric power for those in that region. The National Industrial Recovery Act stated that workers had the right to unionize for higher wages and better working conditions.